Hello everybody! I have been experimenting with drop pods for the Kraken Incorporated Kerbal Space Corporation. This is what I wound up with, and let me give you a little demonstration. I can actually land this on top of the KSC. Here we are entering orbit with our drop pod. Our experimental drop pod on this enormous tug, and Commander Jebediah, who is having a wonderful time. Oh, I need to put more SAS on this. It's such a mess. I need to put RCS on this. It's useless. Anyway, Commander Jebediah having a wonderful time as he tests our new experimental drop pod. Good enough. We're going to zip all the way around and detach and then drop in on top of KSC. There it is right there. These come with the B9 Aerospace mod, and they are surface-mounted air brakes. Normally you'd use these on a plane to slow it way down, or I'm not really sure what you would use them for most of the time, maybe just drop pods. But they can slow this thing down to 30 meters per second, hence with the little bitty rocket on the end. That's both to decelerate it, to deorbit the thing, and it's so that you can land it, because you do need a little pump of the rocket at the end of the descent. It's just so cute. Look at it. I had to put solar panels on it to make sure it wouldn't run out of electricity if it winds up in orbit for more than a minute. Its electricity is actually pretty well set. And it has these little lander legs. Honestly, I don't like these lander legs at all. I never use them, but they work really well for the drop pod because everything else is too big. And one important thing about drop pods is it has to look really small. It has to look like something that's just for one guy to sit in while he falls out of orbit in a totally unsafe manner. So Captain Jebediah over here, Commander Jebediah, is our badass space marine who's about to drop out of orbit. One thing I did notice is that when you completely kill the orbital velocity, you don't get to see the re-entry effects, obviously, unless you're really far away and falling from a ridiculous distance. But the fact that you don't get to see the re-entry effects sort of makes the drop pod meaningless. You're not in a drop pod so that you can gently fall through the atmosphere. You're in a drop pod so that you can have atmospheric re-entry effects happen around the vehicle. That's another reason it has such a tiny engine. It's because if you actually do a full deceleration, I mean, you'll be more accurate, but you won't get the re-entry effects, and that's really the point, isn't it? I mean, you're not in a drop pod just to get somewhere. You're in a drop pod to look totally awesome when you get somewhere. It's close-ish. It's close enough for government work, and Kerbal Space Program is, licensed by the Kerbal government. So here we're descending at 130 meters per second, and when we get pretty close to the ground, you can wait quite a while before, usually like to do it 1500 meters right here. Bam! And our surface velocity just drops. So now you drop the landing legs. There they go. And right before impact, we're going to activate that engine one last time to give us a nice... And we're coming in at 30 meters per second. That's about 60 miles an hour. So without that rocket engine on the bottom, it'll come in way too fast. And... good enough. I mean, drop pods are one-time use anyway, so it doesn't matter if the legs break. But, I mean, the legs actually do make this thing work, because they take a little bit of the shock so it doesn't blow up the engine or anything when it lands. And here we are, Commander Jeb, ready to attack KSC. Alright, so here's the drop pod in KSC, and that big tug is totally unreasonable to store something as cool as a drop pod in. So what I've been trying to figure out now is how to build something that can carry this thing. So I'm going to be working on that. I'm going to try to figure out how to carry a drop pod in some sort of troop transport or something. Now, what do you need for a good drop pod ship? We're probably going to have 3 pods on it. I could put more, but I have something else I want to build. I want to build a ground clearing device. Maybe 2, and then 4 ground clearing devices. I want to build something that you can use to clear the area before the drop pods land. Orbital artillery launch attempt number 1. Okay, I forgot to put it standing up. Well, that's a good sign. So let's turn on SAS. I forgot to put stabilize. Oh, no, there it goes. Laggy. Actually, the port count isn't that bad. It's not too laggy with this behemoth of a capital ship. And let's see if it goes. No, it does not go. That's bad. Bill! Jeb! Run! No, yes, like that. Oh, this is gonna be... Oh no, not the Space Center! Alright, launch attempt number 7. More struts. I'm not going to throttle it up all the way this time either. Alright, it's being controlled from there. Good. Well, that looks better. It's just clawing its way into the air right now. Dragging itself up. Actually, going faster than I thought I'd be going at this altitude. Which means the these are going to run out first. Causing it. These things are wiggling around in there. I'll fix that if this one doesn't get into the air. Right, Jeb? Yes, he jumps into it. Steam, shut up. Oh my god, look at it. Look at it. It's still stable though. And it's not stable. Alright, alright, Jeb. Alrighty, we're back, and I've added decouplers and struts to keep those things steady as we launch. We're going to go up only to 2/3 throttle so it doesn't rip itself apart. Still talking to me. Okay, up. Alright, good. Those things are stable. The ordnance is stable. Oddly, the drop pods seem to be fine. Those don't wiggle around at all. They must be a whole lot lighter. Well, they are a whole lot lighter. talking about the difference between a solid-state booster along with guidance equipment and just a drop pod. The point of a drop pod is that it's tiny and light. So, looks like we got the staging correct. This is temp number, I don't even remember. Kraken Incorporated is getting a little bit frustrated with their engineers. There have been a few death threats. There's been one. Jeb actually personally assaulted one of the engineers earlier. He was angry that the engineers wouldn't get him into orbit so that he could die a hero there. He doesn't want to die falling back to the ground. He wants to die a hero in orbit, or preferably another planet. So, he's getting pretty testy. I personally don't actually like using MechJab because that takes all the fun out of it. Does that mean something? Something. I just keep on seeing that thing floating there. I don't know what it is. So MechJab sort of takes you out of it, and once you've been doing this for a while, you sort of get a feeling for when you need to do your gravity turn, how steep it needs to be, that sort of thing. And this thing has so much drag, I don't think I want to do my gravity turn yet. I can circularize later with the nuclear engines, which seem to be a little bit wiggly. We're going to run out of fuel before we're done. I will need to use the nuclear engines, and they will take a lot longer, so I might wind up tumbling back out of orbit. We'll see. It's going to the left. Okay, stop. I must have been rubbing on something. See, that's what I was afraid of. That's a 2-minute burn. Depending on what altitude we are at, by the end of that burn, we might have serious problems. We're just finishing our orbit now, raising our periapsis to 110 kilometers. Our apoapsis is over 250 because I miscalculated the burn, so we can't have a pretty circular orbit, but that's okay. These weapons should work in both a circular and non-circular orbit. And they're actually designed for environments with atmospheres, so this is pretty much a vessel custom designed to deal with problems on the lathe. Because I don't expect there to be many Kerbal problems. There's Jebediah, he's having a great time. Bill's not pleased about the fact that the only way down is in a drop pod. This thing is not going to be landable. Alright, so how should we do this? We're going to try and land on KSC. And by land, I mean bombard, because precision is absolutely necessary. So, let's take our first long-range artillery and detach it. And here we are, decoupling our first rocket. Our first piece of ordnance. Please tell me that had enough electricity. Alright, let's take a look at her. This is long-range artillery right here. That's what this is. Oh, no. Turn off. Oh, no. Oh. Oh, no. Oh, no. Rip the ship apart. Alright, I didn't quick save it either. I need to drop pods, okay? Alright, no, they're both alright. So if I can get a Kerbal over there, we can continue testing. Jab. There we go. Okay, so now that Bill and Jeb are safe in the drop pods, and I've made a complete mess of things, we're going to try this again. Decouple node. Alright, here it is, slowly floating forward. Alright, so if I hit the spacebar one time, that should activate those engines. And nothing happened, the engines are off. What about my control? Control from there. I'm gonna try again. Oh, no, not that way. Alright, this way if something bad happens. Something bad happened. Alright, we're gonna forget that whole mess happened. I had some more trouble. I wound up losing the crew. So I just brought up another ship from the beginning, and we're gonna actually do the real weapons test. Let's take a look at where we are in our orbital trajectory. That's pretty good. We're, again, going to try and land on top of KSC. I actually moved our orbit into the same debris field as before. It's still there. But because the new 0.21 update of KSP, I'm actually looking forward to the 0.22 update. But the new 0.21 update of KSP is going to makes it so that on the map view you can't actually see debris. Now, one thing I learned is that you should activate these manually, which really just takes a second. So there, and everything's inverted in terms of steering from those rockets. So what we're actually going to be doing is we're steering from this point here. Let's tip it so that it's easier to look at it this way for me. Alright, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to set up a burn point so that we can land on top of KSC, the Kerbal Space Center. So after another misfire, because I don't think you just want to see rockets crashing into the ocean over and over, so I skipped it. After another misfire, we have one rocket left. We're still going to try and bombard the Kerbal Space Center from orbit, but I understand now why orbital bombardment cannons are a rarity in reality, because they're really hard to aim. It's about noon at the Kerbal Space Center, and they're all hoping to see Kerbals come down. Oh, stop. Okay, we got plenty of time. They're all hoping to see the Kerbals come down in their drop pods, but we're gonna give them a nasty surprise, because Dothel Kerman has defected to a rival corporation and has taken Bill prisoner. So he's using these bombardment cannons to attack the Kerbal Space Center. And originally they were going to test it by firing at something innocuous, but we never got the chance. If I actually point the whole ship retrograde, I should just be able to fly those out the front and it'll look kind of cool and badass, but I'm not doing that this time because I'm lazy. Here we are working on our burn. There goes the ship. Our orbital insertion burn is not an orbital insertion, our deorbit burn. Our deorbiting burn seems to be going pretty well. We're going to try to overshoot KSC by a bit more, because I always underestimate how much the atmosphere slows the ship down. Even as low drag as these vessels are, they still have definite limits. And then hopefully this evening at KSC, well, we'll see. We'll see if Bob can escape from Durduffel's clutches and our rival corporation, which I still don't know the name of because nobody else is playing against me yet. But we'll see. We'll see if we get there. Bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. There we go. And this time we're aiming for a location about twice as far from the coastline as those islands which I aimed for before. Alright, we just now are getting into the atmosphere, so we should start seeing a reduction in this landing location any minute now. Come on. There's KSC. We look like we're on a direct course over it. Oh, perfect. There we go. There we are. Oh, not quite yet.
Psychoactive, little friend, join our club, something up, little friend. Psychoactive, little friend, join our club, something up, little friend. One time, singing pine, lit a fire, and I got it to time. I was too late to drive. I wasn't even high. I knew that this psychoactive, little friend, join our club, something up, little friend. I feel like you're psychoactive, little friend. Join our club, something up, little friend. Next time you see me in the cup. Girlfriend.
Nice. Boom. If this was an actual thing I was aiming at, I would have missed, but KSC is pretty big, so I'm pleased with that. Meanwhile, in orbit, it looks like Bill has just barely managed to get out of the capsule, and so while Darduff is putting his spacesuit on, Bill's going to try and get to one of these drop pods. Now, if he can get loose fast enough, he won't make it to KSC. But after all that fighting in there, it's actually been a while, so he's going to try and get to Jeb. He knows that there's currently a mission to go and pick up Jeb. Alright, it looks like the only way to board these, I'll need to change that, is to decouple them and then wait for them to scooch out. Well, that's okay. I mean, Bill's a Space Marine badass, so should be fine for him to board vessels while they're in orbit. There we go. And point that thing retrograde. Let's take a look. We're going to try and land here, where Jeb is, with the Orpheus class orbital Shrike. Now, because there's already a mission, the diplomats have already worked out a deal with that nation, with the desert nation over here. I should come up with a name for them. And the Kerbal Confederacy that we're currently working with is already sending a mission out to go pick up Jeb. But we don't know who caused Darduff to defect and try to steal this ship from us. So what we need to do... Is it empty? No. What we need to do is be sure that we land Bill somewhere safe. Because if it was another nation on Kerbin that caused Darduff to defect, then I think that's his name, Darduff. Doful. It caused Doful to defect, then we might be in some serious trouble if Bill lands in it. Here's Bill coming in over the desert nation that we saw earlier, where Jeb landed his space plane when it ran out of fuel. I'm still trying to figure out how to build a space plane capable of carrying ordnance that doesn't run out of fuel. I can get it into orbit, but only barely. If I could put a nuclear engine on it, that would be fine, but it doesn't have enough thrust to overcome the drag of the ordnance that I put on it. So I really sort of wind up in this weird position where without weapons it can get into orbit, but with weapons it can't. Of course, I could always play disarmed Kerbal Space Program and sign on to that Kerbin Global Space Disarmament Treaty, but Kraken Incorporated does not play like that. We want to be able to defend ourselves, if need be. There he is. There's Jeb. It looks like we're coming in off course. 8 meters per second. 4. There we go! Touchdown! And there's our suborbital strike. Let's take a look. Here's Jeb! Jeb's happy to see some company. He's gonna hop out and go say hello. Here we are. See, that's where the weapon mounts are. And I fired them while they were in orbit, but I still can't seem to get this thing to get into orbit with the weapons on it and with the nuclear engine. I'm using a Aerospace right now. And that seems to work pretty well, as I can carry some extra fuel and actually get into orbit, but it doesn't work as well as I'd like it to. And he's going to come over here and meet up with his friend Bill. And we're going to wait for rescue. I don't know what's happening in orbit right now. Maybe we can track down where Darda is planning on landing so we can see who managed to convince him to attack the Kerbal Space Center. Oh, here he is. And he hops out of the drop pod, so Bill and Jeb reunited. Good for them. Successful mission. And we should be able to track down where Darda lands. Daffel, whatever his name is. He's some little, you know, lieutenant that nobody cares about, and that's probably why he defected to begin with. But we'll see where he lands, because the only way down from that vessel is a drop pod.